Good afternoon. My name is David Brown. I'm with the Cumorah Expedition Team, and we're going to be sharing some of the things that we experienced this last trip that we had. I entitled this, How Beautiful Are the Waters of Mormon, and by the time we get to the very end, I think you'll understand why I selected this title. The Cumorah Expedition Team traveled to Mexico from May 23rd through June 4th of 2006. Our intent was to revisit sites that we had already identified as Book of Mormon related and to investigate possibilities for new discoveries. Our first day in Mexico was spent visiting the site of Teotihuacan. We introduced new travelers to the concept that Teotihuacan is a star chart that marks the birth of Jesus. So here's some of the travelers that were new to this site this year, and that's Greg Manning on the far left there. And this second distinguished gentleman here in the middle is Mimo. Mimo is a Mexican national. He's been involved in the church for decades and was part of the translation of the Book of Mormon and other materials into Spanish for the church. We made our way up and down the Avenue of the Dead, and here is an interesting thing I wanted to share with you real quick. We're on the west side of the Pyramid of the Sun, which is about halfway through the Avenue of the Dead, and we caught it at midday, which is the perfect time to get the shadows that are up here on the steps and on this one recessed part that creates a shadow. It's a shadow of a cross. And the cross is sitting on a pedestal. This particular Pyramid of the Sun is actually a representation of Jesus Christ as the moon. He is the one, he didn't come to give his own light. He gave the light of the Father, and he reflected that light into our night, the same way that the moon reflects the light of the sun. And so he is a reflection of the Father. And so, but that was neat. We were able to take a selfie there and be underneath the shadow of the cross. And then this is another selfie at the end of the line, the very north end of the Avenue of the Dead. This is the Pyramid of the Moon. By the way, moon and sun is what the archaeologists assigned to those particular pyramids. But this is representing the end of all life, when we enter into judgment and we are reconnected with our Creator, or not, depending on how that works. But this is the ascension back into the heavens, being reconnected with the Father through what Jesus did on our pathway to the end. So we left there midday and drove about 6 hours down to Tuxtepec. Tuxtepec is, I have it here marked as Koshka, but that's where we believe the Cumorah is located. So we're about 35 miles from Cumorah there, and we spent the night there. So that the next day, on May 25th, we drove out to Cumorah, and here you see enshrouded in the very top. This is the mountain itself. That's Cerro Ramon. It's the time of year when the mountain is very often shrouded, at least for the first half of the day. Once the morning sun starts hitting that limestone and you get the convection process beginning, it gets a ring of clouds around it. And here you can see that's what's going on. We're down at the river, at the San Juan River, looking up at the mountain at this point. So while we were in the Jalapa de Dios area, which is on the southeast side of Cumorah, we went up to Piedra Anchas. We visited our friends up there, Juan and Lupe. She provided us with all kinds of food. So we were guests at her home, sat down and ate with them. And then we went back down to Santo Domingo. This young lady, we refer to her as Esperanza. We are in the process of sponsoring first aid classes for people in the area who want to do that. Tim Brown has been spearheading that. And so he decided to sit down and gave Esperanza a blood pressure cuff, and he was testing her and her ability to be able to read his blood pressure. So that's part of the outreach that we had going on down in that region. And then Fortunata and her husband, I think it's Paul, they also served us a dinner, and we sat down. Believe me, we were stuffed by the time we had eaten at these two locations. And then we went up on the other side of the hill between Jalapa de Diaz and Hill Cumorah, and we met with our friends, Moises' family. This is Moises' aunt, Isabella, and then her two children, Juanita and Maria. And this is the view she has of that hill every day. She's right here at the base. We believe that the records are probably over in this area, right in here. There's a particular site we've identified. We've done some other exploration as far as metal detection and things of that nature, and have pretty good clues to where they might be. More to come at some point. So the next day was pretty much a travel day. We spent 9 hours on the road, going from Tuxtepec all the way down to Comitan. Comitan is a central location for us in the state of the highlands of Chiapas. And along the way, we stopped at this location called La Candelaria. And it is what I believe is a good example of what's left of the Great Destruction. This is the tallest of 3 like mountains in about a 10 or 15 mile stretch. And you can see here, there's a very sharp ridge that goes up all the way around. That means this particular piece of geology is very young when it has sharp edges like that. And what we believe happened, this is in a region where there was a collision, that we believe that the tectonic plate shift was part of what the cause of the Great Destruction. And the Book of Mormon tells us that the whole land was broken up into fissures, and the rocks were broken and rent and twain and so on. And so this, what it looks like happened here, is there was a fracture and an entire piece got stood upright. There's 2 others that are just, like I say, in about a 15-mile range just down the road here. But that sharp there says it's fairly young in geological terms, because geology, you can usually tell the age of something based on how rounded it has become. When you get the contraction of hot and cold, and the wind erosion and rain erosion, that tends to round things out. And like I say, that's a very sharp ridge all the way along there. So we made it to Comitan that day. The next day, on the 27th, we visited the Archaeological Museum in Comitan, and then we went down to El Lagartero. We visited the Comitan Museum, which focuses primarily on Chincoteague, which we believe is the city of Nephi, Tinapuente, and small regional sites. There are important stelae housed here at this museum. One of which, here you have, Neil Stevie identified this as Mosiah, because they know this is referring to locations along the Usinacenta River, which we've identified as the River Sidon. And so this is down further. There's something on this stela that lets them know that this is referring to the Usinacenta River region. And we believe this is, Neil says, this is Mosiah, and he's using his right hand and giving permission to Zenith to return to the pillar or to the city of Nephi. He's getting permission to go back up to the city of Nephi. And this was found in the city of Nephi. This one was found just outside the city of Nephi. It is the altar of Sabaniab. This is how it's presented in the museum. But if you take a look at this, and I'll get more into an explanation of this later, but what you see is a person whose eyes are slitted like he's squinting, and he's walking like stepping lightly, walking gingerly up these steps into a narrow opening, and he has his right arm up to shield his face so that he's not going to be recognized by whoever is over on the right side of him. What that means is this guy is walking on the left side of whoever he's trying to stay hidden from. Keep that in mind, all the information I just gave you, right? We had our picture taken with this gentleman. His name's Julio. Julio actually owns the ranch that's adjacent to city of Nephi, the site of Chipotink. What I didn't realize when we were talking with him, at first anyway, in 2016, we were at that ranch visiting Carlos Navarrete. Carlos is the one that's the main archaeologist who reported on that site. He's the one who published on that site. And so Neil had a personal relationship with him, and we stopped by and had a visit with him. This was back in 2016. It was his ranch we were on. We didn't know that, but we discovered it in our conversation. So as of now, we have a standing invitation. If we can give him 5 or 6 days advance notice, we have an invitation to go back to his ranch, and he will be a host for us at that location. So we then left Comitan Museum and we went down to El Lagartero. El Lagartero is a new site that came onto our radar because we were looking for potential locations to fit Alma's description of the Waters of Mormon. Nothing does more to either confirm or disprove a theory than actually visiting the site. There's something about being on the site and you get a sense of if the author was writing about that site, you can stand there and look around and you can see the topography. You can see and get into the mind of what the writer was seeing. And it's amazing how confirmations can come. Again, this is El Lagartero. And what it is, El Lagartero is a series of natural springs and pools. There's a resort that's up there. People go there on hot afternoons, like the afternoon we were there, and they enjoy the water. The little cascades and waterfalls throughout the whole area because it goes down level to level to level. And this gives you an idea. Tim is up on the bridge here. This gives you an idea of the scale of the size of these little pools, right? What's interesting is, on an island in the middle of all this, we find Mayan pyramids. These were located here. And anywhere we find Mayan pyramids, it stimulates in us an immediate, okay, whoever was building in the Golden Age to give us a testimony of the Book of Mormon, they picked sites and they built these to highlight that it had a purpose and a reason because it's part of the story. So this is big to us, it's huge to us, the fact that you're in the middle of a small area that has natural pure water and that has actually a security perimeter because these are on an island. In addition to that, here's a ball court. And what we discovered is anytime we find a ball court, it's a symbol that some kind of spiritual battle took place here. And the fact that this ball court is above ground tells us that it is one where the spiritual realms were successful. So it's a battleground and the spiritual realms were successful. This gives you an idea. There's also some aged trees, and I'm not talking about Carol, here on the site. It's amazing how huge that thing is, right? And here we're leaving the site. We had to come in and leave by fording, going over one of these springs. So the next day, May 28th, we went to Chincoteague, which again, we believe is the city of Nephi, and then to Tinum Punte. Chincoteague is a site that Neil Steeding long ago identified as the city of Nephi. Evidences here are abundant. The pass behind the temple on the back side of the city, several stelae that reference Book of Mormon stories, and carvings that are specific to passages found in the Book of Mormon. All right, let's get you in the mindset here of what you're about to see. So the people of Limhi are now under a 50% tax. Everything that they bring out of the ground or that they're making, half of it goes to the Lamanites. And it's a very, very burdensome situation. Limhi wants to leave. Gideon is talking with him, and he says, here's an idea. Gideon said unto him, behold the back pass through the back wall on the back side of the city. The Lamanites or the guards of the Lamanites by night are drunken. Therefore, let us send a proclamation among all this people that they gather together their flocks and herds, that they may drive them into the wilderness by night. And I will go according to thy command and pay the last tribute of wine to the Lamanites, and they will be drunken. And we will pass through the secret pass on the left of their camp when they are drunken and asleep. Thus we will depart with our women and our children, our flocks and our herds into the wilderness, and we will travel around the land of Shiloh. A lot of information there. But here we have a view. This is a temple. This is the back side of the city. This is the back wall. And I'm going to show you here, there's this temple mound is really falls off on both sides. Anciently, there were steps that went all the way up from the plaza down below and went all the way up to this temple. And it's behind the temple that there is a land bridge. This is a natural land bridge. So Gideon said unto him, behold, the back pass through the back wall on the back side of the city. There wasn't anything built up above.
Could you go back to the last slide and put your finger on the temple? I couldn't.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the temple right here.
Thanks.
Yep. Now, remember this, the altar of Sabalnian? If you lay it down this way, it's the temple mound. It's the secret pass. It's the water on the left. It's the water on the right. And it's these people that are at nighttime and they're walking up the steps and going through the pass. That was found up in this area, up in this region. And it's the right arm up because they're going on the left side of the camp. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to have their face discovered. Right? So it means the Lamanites are on the right-hand side. They're going to the left side. That whole thing is a confirmation all by itself. The pass through the back wall on the back side of the city, this particular altar, which is giving all the information that is given to us in the Book of Mormon, that's specific, event-specific, about leading up through this pass through the back wall on the back side of the city. And even this guy is correct in the way that they're displaying him, trying to go to the left side. Here's the temple from the front.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
On the one right before that, it's a little hard to see from here, but when you're there and you look, surrounding that, you can kind of see on the right side and on the top is the water. And
Yeah.
then when you're there, you can see it. It goes around all of it. And so when you're up on that temple and you're looking down, you can see it's surrounded by water, just like that depicts
That's correct.
when we see that.
So what he's referring to is the fact that there are waves carved on the edges on 3 sides, which is indicating water, flowing water on 3 sides. So when you're here, you have a lake that's over on this side, and there is a canal that has been dug, and it connects. It goes all the way around through here and comes over on this other side and connects with this other lake over here. And so even this isolation of the temple being surrounded on 3 sides by water is accurate.
So we got to see that first,
Yeah.
and then go to the actual site and see it look just like it was depicted on that, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah. So this is that temple from the front, and this is that same temple from behind. We're standing probably right about here and taking a picture of it from the back side. That's a 180 feet drop from here down to here, and same over here. Here we are by the temple. This is a ball court that's down on the main plaza. It's above ground. It's a huge ball court. There are markers all over the place up here because there are a lot of spiritual struggles that went on in the city of Nephi. And then Carol was making friends with she kept us in good graces with the policia. Okay. What's interesting is, at many of the sites that we went to in Mexico, they had police on site, and they were acting more as public relations. They were coming up and introducing themselves, how you doing, and really being like public relations. So Neostiti had originally identified the site of Tina Puente as Jerusalem, where Aaron had met with governmental resistance and was sent out of the land because the people of Jerusalem were practicing an Amalekite religion. If this is Jerusalem, Jerusalem was very clean and wonderfully masoned site. These stones are wonderfully cut, tight. It just looks clean and straight lines everywhere. There were a total of 3 ball courts in this location. And so I have not done in-depth study yet on what stela were found here. There were a few stela that were found, and I'd like to figure out what might be depicted in some of these. Almost every ball court has got what they call ball court markers that are located down on this lower level, and they very often will at least provide you with a subject matter of what they're representing. There's a better view of what a ball court marker would look like. Those would be carved on the top. Anyway, like I say, everything was very clean, and you'll see that it was a strategic location. It was built up on a high, not so much a mountain, but a high hill, because that's a modern-day city that was down below. That's probably 200-300 feet lower than where this particular site was located. So on May 29th, we went to the site of Tony Na. Years ago, Neil Stevie definitively identified Tony Na as the Book of Mormon city of Ammonihah. Tony Na has all the history of the city of Ammonihah, from 2 visitors who were taken captive to a ball court with markers that indicate the rejection of the gospel and destruction from an invading army. This year, while visiting the site, we noted that the museum had carved stones of the 2 visitors who were held captive, and that these 2 stones were originally found on a high plaza near the top of the central structure. Now, these are the 2 museum replicas, and we believe that this is Alma. Why? Because the headdress is, it's got an eye in the middle of it. It's someone who spiritually has sight. He sees things spiritually. And coming out of the front here are corn leaves. It's a corn plant, which is an indicator of life. And it's in the design of speech scrolls. So he's speaking life. There are corn kernels here, so he's planting the seed of life. So that, and at the time, Alma had given up his judgeship. He was no longer chief judge. He was now solely the high priest. And he was going around and he was preaching. And so that's who this is. This is Alma. This, we believe, is Amulek. It's interesting, he has a pretty bushy mustache up here. And his headdress is a covenant knot. It's a bow. It's in the form of a covenant. So it's a covenant knot. It's saying, I'm making a covenant or a bond, right? And so here is where they were found. Alma's was over on the left over there, and Amulek's was on the right. Now, what is that in context to the rest of the site? This is the large hillside structure of Tumninah, which we believe is Ammonihah. And each of these levels, the archaeologists believe each of these levels represents something. The bottom was the common population. That's where everyone had all things in common. They all shared the same space. The next one was the merchant class, and then the warrior class, and then the governmental class, and everything above that was spiritual. And so it's up in the spiritual realm where we find Alma and Amulek. It's all part of what was going on in the spiritual activities of this site. And then, to juxtapose, we have a ball court here, but it is a sunken ball court. It's right here back over to the right behind us from where this picture was taken. This is the sunken ball court. You see that this is the ground level. So it's down below. That indicates that it was the rejection of the gospel. The gospel was brought in. There are serpent heads here at the end, which we believe represents the introduction of the gospel. The serpent heads at the center are turned upside down. The heads are upside down. And the result of that rejection of the gospel ended up, these are people who are kneeling on their knees and their hands are tied behind their back. It went so far as, if you remember at Ammonihah, the people who were converted and who believed in Alma and Amulek, many of them were put to death. So not only do they reject it, but they actively acted against it, which led to a judgment that was put upon them. It's actually recorded here in this stucco frieze. What you see here is this rodent. The powerful people who were working behind the scenes were trying to bring this ball here with the head in it. We've come to understand that that is a symbol for a people who have been displaced by power or by force. And that would be the 7 converted cities of the Lamanites who were displaced. This class, the power class, were trying to bring these back into submission. And by doing that, they unleashed this work of death. They stirred up the Lamanites, the Amalekites, and the Ammonites, and they ended up taking the head of the king, Anti-Nephi-Lehi. And because of that, there was a sacred judgment of death. The upside-down head would be death. Heaven declared a judgment upon this place. Alma records it this way. When the Anti-Nephi-Lehi had submitted themselves in front of their attackers and allowed themselves to be killed, some of the Lamanites, who were actually Lamanites, were stung by the fact of what they had done, and they threw down their weapons. Others with some of the Amalekites and Ammonites, said they did no more attempt to slay the people of Anti-Nephi-Lehi at that time, but they took their armies and went over into the borders of the land of Zarahemla and fell upon the people who were in the land of Ammonihah and destroyed them. And this is recording that event, that series of things that went towards the destruction of Ammonihah. All right, on May 30th, we got in our vehicle and spent another day traveling. This time, we followed a path that we thought would be very close to what the Nephites, when they were originally leaving the city of Nephi and ended up finding Zarahemla, they probably came down this route and came up the Lacandone River, which eventually emptied into the Usinacenta, and then found Zarahemla. We believe Yashutlan is Zarahemla. So this is our travel. One of the places we stopped by was the Lagos de Montebello. It's a series of very large lakes, and that was one of the possibilities that we were looking at for the Waters of Mormon. But we'll get more on that later. There were other rivers on the high level. They were pretty clear. This gives you an idea of the roughness of the terrain as you're coming down out of the mountains and making your way down to the lowlands. This is the Lacandone River as you're coming. It's probably about 2/3 of the way down the mountainside. Beautiful, beautiful turquoise, blue-green, wonderfully clear water. And then this is the Lacandone River, way on down close to where it actually empties into the side or into the Usinacenta. Here, this is more like the Missouri River or Mississippi River, where after it's carved its way through the silt of the lowlands, it's picked up a lot of the brown mud and dirt, and it's got that darker color. All right, May 31st, we made our way up to the site of Yashutlan. It's about a 40-minute boat ride down the Usinacenta River. Yashutlan, as the city of Zarahemla, was the first firm discovery Neil Stevie made, and it led to his Mosiah-Maya matrix, where he cross-referenced multiple Yashutlan archaeological events of the Maya king Shield Jaguar with the historical aspects of the Book of Mormon King Mosiah. In other words, he sat down with Mario Perez Campa, which was his friend who had been working on Yashutlan, and they went through, and Neil had a list of the characteristics and certain known aspects of King Mosiah. He came down to Yashutlan from the highlands, came down to Zarahemla from the city of Nephi. He was a spiritual leader. He taught the people language. He was a prolific builder. And the list just goes on and on. Well, Mario had this list of what King Shield Jaguar had accomplished. He also came down out of the highlands to the Yashutlan. He also brought with him language. He taught the people language. He was a prolific builder. So there was a parallel that Neil was working on there, and it just blossomed at Yashutlan. This is Mimo. He's giving us our devotions as we got onto the site at Yashutlan that morning. The Grand Plaza, located at the base of the site and just above the Usinacenta River, is littered with stela about the transfer of power between those who have charge over the sacred records and the government of the people. Most of these are referring to Mosiah II and Alma II, changing from kings to judges. And this is an example of that. You have two individuals face to face here. This is Mosiah. That's Shield Jaguar. His toe is touching. That's part of his identity. He is Shield Jaguar. He has the kingship, the flat staff, the staff of authority. And this is Alma. It's Bird Jaguar. And it's not just once below the toes, but it's also right here, his headdress is touching bird jaguar. And here's, I believe, what it's indicating. He is now, because we're talking the ground, we're talking the civil government, he is now the chief judge, civil government on the ground. But he is also high priest. It's up above in the headdress, it's up above in the spiritual realm of the individual. Okay? So and he's holding the flat staff of authority here, and the reason shield jaguar is known as a king is because shield indicates protector. He is the governmental protector, the civil protector of the people, of the crown, of the authority. But the buckler of that shield has now been presented to bird jaguar, which is Alma. So he's both the spiritual leader and the civic leader. So all of that we found down here, down below. On this realm over here is where we find what we believe is the daughter of Zarahemla. Temple 23, Lady Kook is her name. And then over on this side is Shield Jaguar's temple, which we believe is Mosiah. The two of them come together, and over a period of time, the spiritual aspects of the civilization was elevated. This goes up to Temple 33 at the top. Temple 33, we believe, represents the church. Why? Because the lintel carvings in each of these doorways are like this. It has this kind of subject matter. These people are just covered in quetzal feathers, which are representative of the spiritual nature of who they are, what they do. And take a look at the staffs that they have. That's a quetzal cross, that's a bird cross. And so this is the spiritual realm. And these panels down here in front on these steps, many of them are showing these individuals receiving people coming into the region. I told you about the balls that represent people who have been displaced forcefully. There's two up here represented, which I believe represents Limhi and his people, and the other is Alma and his people. Both of them are coming in as basically immigrants to Zarahemla, and they're being welcomed in by King Mosiah. And that glyph right there is bird jaguar. Again, like I was saying before, bird jaguar refers to Alma. Now, above that, at the very top of this site, we have a temple. This is the center of three, and it's the highest one on here. And right in front of this, we all took a selfie, but right here, Neil long ago identified this as the foundation of King Benjamin's tower. Why did he say that? Because this, where you see all this foliage, that drops off like this and goes down, and it's a big bowl down below. So that's where all the people would have gathered their tents facing the temple, and then they would have built the tower here, and he would have made his address to the people down below. All right, the next day, June 1st, we went to Lompoc.
David?
Yes?
So the one that you were going over with Mosiah and Alma,
Yeah.
I guess you'd call it the government, or the ones who control the stelas and that, had the story written out that you just described, that the transfer, it went over, so they basically say, this is what this depicts.
That's right.
And they went over everything that he just stated, and then they go, but this is propaganda because we know it never happened. And
Right.
so they're even saying this is what it indicates, so they know it indicates what the Book of Mormon has told us.
I actually put that slide in and I took it out, but I'm glad you brought it up.
But it was
What he's
just
saying
amazing.
was the placard that went with that statement that I showed you on the ground that had Alma and Mosiah, or Mosiah turning things over to Alma, they said on there, it was the transfer of power from shield jaguar to bird jaguar. And in the very next sentence, but we know that that was propaganda because that never happened. Yeah.
It's the same thing that we have here in the States with the Bible and everything else, that, you know, well, here's the story of Christ and here's this, but we know there's never really a Christ that came.
Yeah.
We know there was never this that happened. And so it just amazed me that even though there's this archaeological evidence that's right in front, which they admit there is, and on the same site where there is the transfer from the throne to the judges, which shows this is what happened at that period. They know those things happened at that site. They just don't know why that would happen. They're like, well, I don't know why that they would transfer, why they would change governments like this. But it's exactly what the Book of Mormon says.
So unfortunately, Neil Stede had become very good friends with Mario Perez Campo, who, like I say, spent the latter part of the 80s and early 90s at this site. And in one of those conversations, the first conversations that they had, they were talking about the throne room down here, and Mario was like, you know, I can't quite figure this out. This is kind of weird. Never have we seen this anywhere else. In a throne room, you have a king's throne. And that's what they had at one time, a king's throne in the throne room. But then, they added 4 more thrones. It went from 1 throne to 5 thrones. And Mario, this was his deduction, he says, you can't have 5 concurrent kings. They must have gone to judges. And Neil's dying inside. He's like, ding, 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 ding. You know, they went from kings to judges. And their throne room represents it. They just don't know how to interpret it. They don't know the story. Anyway, Bonaparte is where we went on June 1st. Bonaparte is a site that Neil Stede identified as the city of Melek for 2 reasons. First, the murals of Bonaparte is the converted Lamanite story. And second, the city is geographically close to Zarahemla so that the Nephites could better protect the Lamanite converts. If you remember, there was all these tensions, and so the Lamanites, the converted Lamanites, are fleeing their cities. There's 7 converted cities. They're fleeing. And Ammon and Aaron and the 4 sons of Mosiah are actually bringing them down into the lowlands, and they're waiting just outside of the realm of the Nephites. And Ammon and Aaron, and they go in, and they run across Alma while they're in the land of Manti. And that's where they have that whole dialogue that becomes the 12th, 13th, and 14th chapters of Alma, where they're recounting all the things that went on. Anyway, the bottom line is the converted Lamanites get the permission to come in, and they take over the land of Jershon. But now, the Nephites are set up as the army that is protecting them, and there are thousands of Nephites who are dying protecting the Lamanites, because the Lamanites have made a covenant with God that they can't defend themselves. So eventually, that's where we get into the story of Hagoth, and there's migrations out of the area. Eventually, we're told that the converted Lamanites are brought over into the city of Melek, which is closer to Zarahemla, and the Nephites could better defend them there. That's what this is. Bonaparte is that gathering point for better protection. This is what it looks like. It's another hillside, and this particular building is where the murals are located. There are 3 mural rooms. The murals are very popular, very well known throughout all of archaeology, and it tells the conversion story. It shows the four sons of Messiah coming in, the conversion, and eventually, this is number 3. This is where everyone gets down into, they're all protected in the land of Jershon. But in the center, there's this, and it shows specifics. How many were converted? How many cities? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 cities were converted. This particular one is King Anti-Nephi Lehi, we believe. There were 3 that were against him. It was Jerusalem, Amulon, and Helam. Those 3 cities were against. And they were the ones who were basically tormenting the 7 who had converted. What's interesting is here, the archaeologists, the ones who interpret all these things, they have deducted that this person rising up out of the crowd, one of their own, is swinging a sword and takes the head of this particular. They know that this head belongs to this person because the toe is connected to it. And so they take the head of this king. So it's the converted Lamanite story. Here, this is stela number 1. It's in the middle of that particular plaza in front of that large wall or the large hillside. And if you stand facing it directly, you're actually looking right towards Yashimon, right towards Zarahemla. So it is actually located where it's telling you this way is Yashimon or Zarahemla. This is a Yashimon or Zarahemla warrior. He's holding a staff that has 7 bonds on it. So this is the 7 cities who made a bond or a covenant with God that they would not take up arms to defend themselves. And this Nephite warrior, his eye is gazing so focused on where his hand has hold of that staff. He's there to protect these people in that covenant. Why? Because the head of the king has been taken. So that's right there in Bowenpak, city of Melech. There we are, getting our picture taken. So after that was done, we drove up to Palenque, and on June 2nd, we visited Palenque. Palenque was also one of the first Book of Mormon cities that Neil Stevie identified. It is the city Bountiful, where Christ visited the remnant Nephites, and I say remnant, the ones who were not killed in the Great Destruction. Right? The testimony of Christ here is overpowering. You have the cross complex, the temple 19, temple of the inscriptions, temple of the Red Queen, and the palace with its iconic tower. The way you get into Palenque, I warned you ahead of time, they've changed all that. They put you out farther away. You have a rally point. You have to park your vehicle, pay all your money, get on their bus that you have to pay for to get taken up to the site. But they did have this nice replica here of the palace. And so we got an opportunity to go over some of the details that we find here. My particular theory on this, some people in the past have said, well, that's King Benjamin's tower. Now, this actually fits with the whole site of Palenque tells of the story of the importance of erecting the axis of earth to heaven. We walk through the plane of 4 directions, and that's what we're born into, and that's where we're going to stay unless we have a covenant with God and erect that axis of earth to heaven. This is representative of that axis of earth to heaven. Oh, and by the way, celestial, terrestrial, telestial glories. Okay? This is the palace, or the temple of the Red Queen. This is the temple of the inscriptions. It's my contention, it's my belief, This is representing the house of Judah. It is the throne of Judah. And this represents the house of Joseph, or the scepter of Joseph. So the blessings of Joseph is represented here. Pakal's tomb is inside of that. Around his sarcophagus are carved 10 figures, like, I don't know, 10 lost tribes of Israel. So I think the representation here is that these two were united, and it's in allusion to Lady Cook, or the daughter of Zarahemla, marrying Mosiah. It's the house of Judah, the house of Joseph, united throne. And out of that uniting then comes this palace, this unified axis of earth to heaven. It's the presentation of the gospel, basically. This is one of those inner courtyards at the palace. That's the temple of the sun over there. There's a whole, just on these 3 tablets, there's a whole presentation that can be made. That's the temple of the foliated cross. Thou gave us our devotion on the site that day. It was a good day that we had there. Palenque was the last site we visited while in Mexico. June 3rd we spent driving back to Mexico City, and then we flew back to Kansas City on June 4th. Unlike our expedition last fall, we were able to accomplish everything we set out to do this trip. We visited many sites that Neil had positively identified, and were able to discover further details that supported previously made Book of Mormon city identifications. One of my primary goals for this trip was to visit areas that were potential locations for the Waters of Mormon described in the Book of Mormon texts. 2 locations were identified as having strong potential for being the Waters of Mormon: Lagos de Montebello and El Lagartero. Now, right over here is Chincoteague, this is the city of Nephi. So from this Google Earth, you can see all of the water that's around this whole region. There's a series of lakes and cenotes that go through here, all around here, all the way down, a very large lake here, and it goes down even farther. There's a couple of large lakes down here in Guatemala. I would be tempted to think that maybe here would be where the Waters of Mormon would be located. Here's one of the problems. We're told about the pass when they went through the pass and left through the area. They went into the wilderness and they went around the land of Shiloh. The hint is, so here's the pass that they went through. This would have been the Lamanite army camp right in this region right here. So if you go across and you escape up into this higher level, you go around through the wilderness up here, because the implication is this is the land of Shiloh, and that's going to be a whole lot of Lamanites in this region. As a matter of fact, I'm working now on the idea that, remember the 24 Lamanitish women who were abducted by the priest of Noah? I think they were resorting at one of these locations. Okay? But when I look at this, it's tempting. It may be true, but by contrast, oh, by the way, from that location we took a picture, and it's very large, it's very spacious. It's hard to get, if you remember the dialogue that we get from Alma's talking about the Waters of Mormon, it's very intimate. It's very closed. It's hidden. And it would be hard to get that feel here. Okay, so by contrast, here's El Lagartero. We'll go back to the fact that this is the island area where you've got all of those Maya structures. You see this wooded area around here. Well, actually all around this area. There's some places that have a lot of swampish type that you wouldn't be able to build structures on. But just a reminder, it's a lot of series of pools that are kind of small and cascading water. Here Mima was getting a drink of water on a hot day. It was very refreshing. So logistically, it's 21 miles from the city of Nephi to here. You go down about 1,300 feet. There's a kind of a steep shelf right in this region right here, and we drove down in a lot of switchbacks back and forth. But I'm trying to give you the sense of what this looks like here, and then read the scripture. This is out of the 9th chapter of Mosiah. And it came to pass that as many as did believe him, Alma, did go forth to a place which was called Mormon, having received its name from the king, being in the borders of the land, having been infested by times or at seasons by wild beasts. And there was in Mormon a fountain of pure water, natural spring. And Alma resorted thither, there being near the thicket, there being near the water, a thicket of small trees, where he did hide himself in the daytime from the searches of the king. And it came to pass that as many as believed him went thither to hear his words. And it came to pass after many days, there were a goodly number gathered together to the place of Mormon to hear the words of Alma. Now I'm going to skip several verses because in those verses we're given the details of how they went about baptizing all of the people that were gathered. And they did walk uprightly before God, imparting to one another both temporally and spiritually according to their needs and their wants. And now it came to pass that all this was done in Mormon, yea, by the waters of Mormon, in the forest of Mormon, that was near the waters of Mormon. Yea, the place of Mormon, the waters of Mormon, the forest of Mormon, how beautiful are they to the eyes of them who there came to the knowledge of their Redeemer. Yea, and how blessed are they, for they shall sing to his praise forever. But when you read through kind of the nostalgia intimacy that they felt there, and then take a look at this, it really resonated with me. This seemed to be a place where I could generate that kind of a feeling about. You know, we think back to our years of reunions and having grounds that were similar to these where we gathered, right? But behold, it came to pass that the king, having discovered a movement among the people, sent his servants to watch them. Therefore, on the day that they were assembling themselves together to hear the word of the Lord, they were discovered unto the king. And now the king said that Alma was stirring up the people to rebellion against him. Therefore he sent his army to destroy them. And it came to pass that Alma and the people of the Lord were apprised of the coming of the king's army. Therefore they took their tents and their families and departed into the wilderness. And they were in number about 450 souls. I could imagine about 450 in this area. That would be kind of a tight, close quarter, everybody looking out for one another, having things in common. And we go to the 11th chapter of Alma, and he says, Mosiah. Now Alma, having been warned of the Lord that the armies of King Noah would come upon them, and had made it known to his people, therefore they gathered together their flocks and took of their grain and departed into the wilderness before the armies of King Noah. And the Lord did strengthen them, that the people of King Noah could not overtake them to destroy them. And they fled 8 days' journey into the wilderness. And they came to a land, yea, even a very beautiful and pleasant land, a land of pure water. And they pitched their tents and began to till the ground and began to build buildings. Yea, they were industrious and did labor exceedingly. This is speculation at this point, but I'm trying to be true to the dialogue that we just read. King Noah's army is coming this way from the north. Are you going to escape that way up to it? No, you'd be trying to escape where your paths never cross. If you go down and come through this area, and follow right along. You go by Zacudio, where we went last year, and we went to Nano. And you come across to this place called Agua Catan. Agua Catan has a very large natural spring. It's called Rio San Juan. And here's what I think are a couple of things that are clues. This is 42 miles as the crow flies. Now, 450 people, 8 days in the wilderness, I don't know how fast they can go. It's fairly flat if you go this way. As you come up in this region, you're starting to get up into the 6,000 foot above sea level. This is 9, 10, 11, 12,000. They're not going to go through this region. They're going to come through and bend. I'm speculating at this point that that's where they would have gone. Why? Because later on we find out Alma and them are discovered by the Lamanites because they build the city of Helam here. And they're discovered by the Lamanites. And eventually they escape. Now, I think later the Lamanites built this, Coolio, and that became the city of Helam that the Lamanites housed. This, right here, is the Continental Divide. This side empties into the Grijalva River, but this, Agua Catan, empties into Usumacinta. Alma and his crew escape to Zarahemla. Zarahemla is on the Usumacinta River. It's a whole different river system than over here. They don't want to go where the Lamanites are thick, up through this region, up through and here into the Lagos de Montebello. They're trying to go where they won't cross paths with them. So, speculation at this point, that's more to go on. Bottom line is that at this point in time, we've identified the site of El Lagartero as the best candidate for the Waters of Mormon. It's located in the borders of the city of Nephi, far enough southwest that it might also be called the borders of the land of Mormon. Additionally, of the two possibilities we've identified, El Lagartero is the only water site with significant pyramid construction to symbolize the spiritual importance of the Book of Mormon story, including a large ball court which symbolizes that spiritual battles occurred here. And it's not a sunken ball court, it's above ground. Our discussion with the staff at Comitong confirmed that there are no known Maya stelae or constructions at Lagos de Montebello. Until further information is found to indicate otherwise, the intimate site of El Lagartero with its small pools and waterfalls is the best candidate for the Waters of Mormon. It kind of gives you the flavor, the feel of it. So, that's the presentation. Yes?
What's the significance of the mustache on Amulette since he didn't have any facial hair?
He's Greek or something, I don't know. No, I think that there's other cultures that have made their way by the time we're here at the 90 BC time frame, 70 BC time frame. Yeah, there's other cultures.
With this escape out of the land of Nephi, Lehi by the Nephites that are taxed,
Yes.
when would they have made a monument and put it in that area?
Probably not while they're escaping. I'm saying our argument has always been that all of these stelae, all of these evidences that they are providing for us were done by at least, at the earliest, Golden Age people. These would have been Golden Age people who would have been documenting their history, how they got to where they were, their interaction with Christ, and everything building up to it.
So they have a committee and they say, we want to put some memorials at these places that are important to us.
Correct.
And then they go back and they do it. Because
Yes.
now they can go back freely.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the archaeologists actually called that the Palenque Stela cult. back in the 50s, they came up with this. Palenque seems to be the place where the Maya glyphs are most prolific. It's where they have the largest corpus of Maya writing. And it seems that Palenque then influenced all of these other places to put up monuments in the same way. And so they call it the Palenque Stela Cult. Neil retermed it the Bountiful Historical Society.
Yeah. With the destruction that happened at the crucifixion and the upheaval and all that, how much can you rely on the current geology being the pre-destruction geology?
Okay. What we're told is there was destruction throughout all the land, but especially in the land northward. So the areas that may be undefinable, unrecognizable, are probably somewhere around the Isthmus of Tehuantepec and north. Things to the south would have had destruction, obviously. They talk about Zarahemla and the fire. They talk about the waters of the deep breaking loose and flooding. There's a lot of stuff. But I think they did the Bountiful Historical Society, the Palenque Stela Cult, whatever. They did the best that they could to identify those locations and be as faithful as possible to it.
So the secret Waters of Mormon, were those temples there when Alma went there to hide out?
No.
Were they built
No.
after to commemorate?
Yes.
Okay.
Afterwards. Yep. Any other questions?
That one pyramid at that location looked like it was sagging.
Weeping. Yeah. Being waterlogged,
Oh,
the
foundation
land,
settled.
yeah, the land around there would tend to
Yeah.
lose its ability to maintain. Yeah.
Like Pisa.
Yeah, like Pisa. Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for, oh, Tim, did you?
Well, I was just going to say, driving down to the Waters of Mormon from where we came from,
Yep.
the hillsides were almost white with broken up little stones,
Yep.
of various sizes, but you know, you couldn't do any kind of raising crops or anything, just because, you know, some kind of a huge event took place. You could,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. All right, well, thank you for putting up, it's stuffy in here. I know you've been fighting it, but thank you.
It's not like outside.
Yeah.